Hi, and welcome to Ladies of Another View on Back. I'm joined here with Carmen and Jan, the three amigos here, and we have a beautiful show today. I'm going to call it beautiful because there's going to be some hard parts, and because we have our guest is Jennifer Hubbard, and she's the author of Finding Sanctuary: How the Wild Work of Peace Restored the Heart of a Sandy Hook Mother. I think you'll recall that next year will be the 10-year anniversary of the Sandy Hook student shooting. And her little girl in kindergarten, Catherine Violet, was one of the victims. So there's no way through it. It's going to be hard. But the reason I have Jenny on today is because her book is so beautiful. It's uplifting. So we're going to go through some hard stuff, but we're not going to stay there. So welcome to the show, Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. And I also know that you have talked about this on major network news shows across the country. You're a very eloquent speaker, and your book is so touching, and it ends with forgiveness. So we're going to go through the whole thing, but
Okay.
let's start. Let me play a clip, and then I want you to fill in what it was like on your end.
Okay.
Some 400 children, kindergartners to fourth graders, went to Sandy Hook Elementary School today to learn and play. 20 would die.
I was in the gym and I heard I heard like 7 loud booms, and the gym teachers told us to go in the corner. So we all huddled, we started crying. All the gym teachers told us to go into the office.
Inside the school, police found the shooter dead.
Who kills kids like this?
Police say they never fired a shot. Many of the shooter's victims, the youngest children in the school.
So it shocked the world,
Yeah.
not just the nation. Can you tell us, briefly, because it's such a big story, tell us what happened from your perspective.
Yeah. So December 14th was one of those Friday mornings. Anyone with young kids, they know the feeling. You've made it through a week. We were waiting for Matt to come home. He was traveling overseas. And so it was a remarkable week in the sense of we were 10 days till Christmas, and they were just ramped up and super excited about all things Christmas and their dad coming home. And it was December 14th was the first day that I sent Catherine off to school without her crying. And it was this beautiful sort of send off. Every day since she started preschool, she would head out to school with this sense of dread and gloom. She just wanted to be home. And it was the normal routine. I sent my kids off to school, and I was getting the house back together, getting ready for the weekend, excited. I remember calling my mom and, oh my gosh, Catherine didn't cry at school today. And the phone call came in, and it literally, my world, there's a moment, and it's in everybody's life. If they remember the moment that tragedy strikes them, it cleaves a point in time. And so mine was the phone call coming in saying, you need to come down to the school, something's happened. And at that point, I didn't know that it was a school shooting, only that something big had gone on. And when I arrived at the school, there was fire trucks had blocked the entrance. They hurtled all of us into the firehouse, which sat at the end of the driveway. And I saw my son, Freddie, was with his teacher, and it was just controlled chaos at that point. The kids had been taken out of the school, and they were huddled around their teachers. And Freddie said, "I can't find Catherine." And we waited there. It seems like we were there forever. What I'm realizing now, and it's almost 10 years, the days were really short. It was one of the shortest days. And so what felt like hours and hours and hours was probably, at 3:00, we got the word that the kids that weren't recovered were fatalities. And there was 26 fatalities, and life forever changed at that point. We came home to a house that I left excited for Christmas with coming walking into the front door with, how do you move forward? How do you breathe?
You are a very talented writer, and your writing is beautiful. From the very beginning of the story, you kept a journal. So we are walking through this with you. It's not just you remembering, it's you experiencing it in your journal. And I was impressed by how strong you were in the beginning. Even though as you get to the end, you go, I'm not the same person in journal number 3 and 4 as I was. But you were strong from the very beginning. Tell us, how did you begin to process everything?
Well, I think that I believe that leading up to December 14th, there was almost a preparation of my heart, for what would be this awful tragedy. My faith was growing. I was surrounded by faithful friends. It was the first time in my life that I felt comfortable talking about God. It was the first time in my life that my faith really, truly felt alive. I'm Catholic, and I never realized how beautiful our faith and the power of our belief in God can be. And so I think that was a huge part of addressing Sandy Hook. I sat in the firehouse and I prayed. I had become very good friends with one of Catherine's friends' mother. And she and I sat in the firehouse and kind of huddled up, and I held a rosary. Someone had handed me a rosary. I held it, and literally I had depressions in my thumb and my index finger. And we prayed. And I really do believe that in that stillness and in that trust, while it didn't feel like trust at the time, it literally was clinging on to anything that I could hold on to. Is where I rallied the strength and the faith to walk forward. I really believe that we were built for fellowship and built for companionship, because we need those people when our world collapses, and when we're surrounded with faith-filled people, then they can hold us up in a way that no one else can.
It's interesting that you felt that God was already preparing you because you had the faith-filled people around you to fall back on. And I did not see as much anger. A lot of times the first instinct somebody has is to be angry. Were you angry at God?
At one point I was. It was later on in the journey. I think when the fog settled and I realized that my life it's not, when you go through trials and tragedies, I read about it in the book, there's no checkbooks. There's nothing in our lives that say, okay, you've now accomplished the goal of tragedy and grieving. It's a constant wave after wave of just hurt. And for me, it was burying Catherine and realizing that our life was changed. And then watching my family grieve, and watching especially my son grieve. And I think that one of the things that I write about in the book is when we can recognize that we can offer all of that to our Heavenly Father. When we can say to God, I'm mad. I'm mad at this situation. I'm mad at what's happening here. Help me process this. He's not going to back away from that. Was really the tipping point for me. The day it happened, it was when I really lashed out at God, was the day that my son had gone to an author's tea. We were closing out the school year. I thought I was done. The author's tea was a complete letdown and disappointment. I'm not going to ruin what's in the book. And I came home to find evidence boxes that they had recovered from the classroom, and that was it. That was probably the end for me. It was 6 months later, and I got mad at God, and I think that it's so important and such. It's such a part of a growing relationship with God when you realize that He wants all of it. He doesn't want just our joy and our praise. He wants our hurt. He wants our tears, and He wants our disappointment, so He can use it.
The thing that kind of came up in my mind right away was you're going through this tragic time with the loss of your daughter, but how did you keep it together for your son, who needed you twice as much as he maybe did before?
Exactly. It was one step at a time. And I think that we do ourselves a huge, huge disservice when we start thinking what has to be done weeks, months, even a year from the time that you're sitting in this moment of realization that your world has just changed. For me, it was Grace in a lunchbox. It was just day by day. I would get up in the morning and what do I have to do today? Or in some cases, what do I have to do in the next hour? And after the Christmas break, we had to put Freddie back on the bus and back into school. And the reality was that the school had said to us, you do what you want to do. We're going to follow your lead. They had never dealt with any sort of tragedy like this before, nor had they ever had to deal with siblings who had lost in a school shooting that they were a part of. So we decided, and there wasn't a lot of conversation around it. It was just a matter of Freddie's going to get on the bus and he's going to go to school. And when that day arrived, I panicked. What have I done? I've made a huge mistake. And one step at a time. I mean, I woke up to Freddie staring at me. I hadn't slept. So he quickly realized that, oh my God, my mother's sleeping and I've got to go to school. And so I got out of bed and I walked downstairs and I had set everything up the night before. And it's amazing. I read it. It's one of my favorite lines in the book. It's amazing what happens when things come out into the light. And there I was looking at a lunchbox, a single lunchbox where I had grown accustomed to packing two. And I just one step at a time, just breathed my way through it, make a sandwich, put a piece of fruit in there. I heard the shower turn off and, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is really happening. And as I'd done since the day both kids started preschool, in went the note. I'll save the note for the book, but it was the first step of beginning to return to life outside of a bubble, and the realization that my role was not to bubble wrap my son. It was to send him off into the world with confidence that he would be okay.
I want to take a look at some pictures of your beautiful children. If we can have those up. Little Freddie and Catherine with their beautiful mother. Look at that. Aren't they precious? And Catherine is so gorgeous. Catherine Violet.
Yep.
Love that red hair. It's such a precious age. I mean, every age is.
Absolutely. That picture was the year she died.
Wow.
How much older is Freddie than Catherine?
They're just about 2 years apart, not even.
Okay. And he's the older child.
Yes. So he's 17 now. And, you know, I look at people who lose children that don't have other children, and I don't know how they do it. I really don't know how they do it. My heart breaks because for me, my purpose became mothering Freddie and making sure that he could navigate whatever this was, and being there for him. It really gave me a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny, help us. You got to a point in the book where you started talking about forgiveness, and it surprised me. I thought, whoa, she's going there. Because you can't start with forgiveness. You can't even talk about it because people don't want to hear it in the beginning. Tell us how you got to that point and why it was important.
Forgiveness was important. It was a selfish reason. The more I dove into my faith, because where I'd put Freddie on the bus and send him off to school, I would come home and I would find myself just enriched and engrossed in prayer, reading the Bible, reading devotionals, reading books. It's how I filled the time and space between the start of the school day and end of the school day, and then working on Catherine's foundation. And, you know, what I found is that forgiveness has nothing to do with restoring a relationship back to what it was, or figuring out how someone gives you retribution for something that they've done to hurt you. I was dealing with a loss that could never be repaid. Nobody could ever bring Catherine back to me. And so what I came to understand was, if we want to follow Jesus, then we have to look at the cross, because we follow Jesus right up to Calvary, and he is on a cross for us, and he forgives us, and he releases us of anything that's due, that we feel that he feels that's due to him. We owe God a whole lot, because we're sinful people. And when I came to the realization that I don't want to hold people accountable, I don't want to hold that anger and that bitterness in my heart, because it's not going to get me anywhere. It's not going to restore Catherine, or bring her back to me, restore her life, or bring her back to me. So I said, you know what? I'm done. Debt forgiven, because it was forgiven for me.
And we talk about forgiveness. The shooter was 20 years old, right? And he committed suicide, shot himself, so he was gone. But was that the big hurdle, that was who you were forgiving? And I know you talk about like forgiving yourself and not being mad at God, but the main forgiveness, was it with the shooter?
I never felt like I needed to forgive the shooter. I always felt bad for the shooter. I felt like he was a weak soul that did something that was encouraged or spurred by the evil. I think that my forgiveness was in forgiving God, because at the end of the day, I knew that God had permitted this to happen, and I had this false sense of who God was, and I had to shift my thinking to realize that God didn't cause this to happen, that God would redeem a choice that was made by a weak soul. I mean, I had to get to that place and realize that I have nothing, there's nothing that's due to me. I have no reason to say that I'm owed anything, because I've been given a life, and I've been given a son, and I've been showered with abundant blessings in the wake of Catherine's death. I have nothing to be angry or begrudge anybody for.
I said we're going to talk about the sanctuary built in her honor, but I want to stop just a minute. And we have a few more questions that I think you can help people with. I would like to know the ways that people helped you and the ways that weren't so helpful.
Yep. The most helpful thing for me was when people were authentic in not knowing what to do. And being sincere about it, saying, I have no idea what to say to you. I'm scared to death to be talking to you. It just cut through any sort of expectation in terms of what was gonna come out of this. That to me is the way that I now approach those people that I know are suffering and grieving for whatever reason. I think that when people would come up to me, they'd show up at my door and they would say, I have no idea what to say to you, but I figured you'd need a cup of coffee. Or it's a really, really cold day and I made you some soup. Here you go. Without any sort of expectation. What was hard for me was when people would say, what can I do for you? And then wait for an answer, because I didn't even know what I could do for myself. And so helpful was just stepping in. And what I've learned now is that was a vulnerable place for those people. And it was a precious gift that they were giving to me, but also that they were giving without any expectations in return. Here's the soup, here's the coffee, I'm out of here. So helpful. Not helpful was the conversations around how I should be doing, or have I done certain things, because nobody grieves in the same way. Nobody will ever have the relationship that I had with Catherine, and so nobody will ever grieve the way that I grieve. And you can't make that claim for anybody. The same truth holds for Freddie. I can never say to Freddie, you've done or haven't done anything, because his relationship with his sister was different, and unique to them. So helpful was people just stepping in, and doing what they would have wanted done for themselves. Not helpful was making an assumption on where we should be at or what I should be doing.
Yeah. And did you find too that, Jenny, that, it's kind of like when we had our babies, and for me, it was Dr. Spock, and it's like, if you can put it all in a book, then these kids are not individuals. They're not cookie cutter kids, right? And
That's
so
right.
with grief, I think it was the same way for you. It's like there's all these books about grief, but you know what? Nobody can define grief because every individual that goes through it is different.
Yep.
Did you
because
find that?
So true. It is so true. Because the person that we're grieving, or the experience that we're grieving, is our own experience. It's our own relationship. It's our own person that we're grieving for or about. There is no book that I read that I found to say that I found to be helpful. And here I am writing a book about grief, but there was nothing out there that was helpful in terms of putting me in a place of, okay, I'm normal. I'm thinking this, and that's okay.
And I have one more question following up on that. I remember at one stage of my life losing a brother, and in that case, it was people would say things like, "Oh, I know how you feel," and it was such an anger thing for me. It's like, you have no idea how I feel. You've never lost a brother. Don't even talk to me. I mean, I can remember thinking like that. Did you have some people say things sort of like that, where it would just trigger, just go away, just leave me to my whatever I'm in right now? Did you go through that?
Absolutely. And now I find myself in a place. Someone had said to me one time, well, she was 6. Like, imagine if she was 18. You'd have to grieve 18 years with her. And, my first thought was, that's not helpful. That's not helpful.
No.
I find myself now in a place where people will say something like, well, like when they talk about losing a parent, well, they lived a long life. They were 80, they were 70, they were 60. It's nothing compared to what you dealt with in losing Catherine. And I find myself mad at that conversation, because I feel like grief, to your point, is unique for each person, for each relationship, for each situation. And it bothers me to see people minimize or compare their grief with the grief of losing a child. We all grieve. And at the end of the day, it hurts. There's no more hurt or less hurt. Grief hurts.
Mm-hmm. So in this whole story, I find myself putting myself in your place, and that makes it hard to even come up with intelligent questions. But was writing this book therapeutic for you?
It was therapeutic in the sense that it reminded me of all of God's graciousness, and the way that He moves, even when I don't necessarily see it. Things like packing a lunchbox, writing a journal, running into someone in the grocery store that said, write it all down. You're never going to remember any of this. Those are graces that sometimes I think get overlooked. And so writing the book was, for me, this beautiful reminder of God's love, and that his provision is going to be over me regardless of what's to come in my future.
Mm-hmm. Before me, behind me, beside me.
Yeah.
So to this day, I'm saying it. We lost a son about a year ago, and he was 23, and it doesn't matter how old they were. They were part of your life, and everybody goes through it differently. And it's just, it is what it is. I guess I don't know how many times I've said that, and we know that they're not coming back, but there's things that we need to walk through, or we're never going to be able to let go and have a full life to give back to God. I think that's the way I look at it, and it sounds like you kind of are on that wavelength too.
Exact same
What do we
wavelength.
give back? You know, what can we give back? How can we make their life count? I mean, that's a big deal, especially to a parent, I think.
It's absolutely, because we bring this child into the world and we want their lives to stand for something. And just because they're not in this physical world, just because now they're with our Heavenly Father, they're in eternity. They're in our where we all want to be. They're home. We still as a parent, we want to see their life stand for something, whatever that might be.
Your daughter had a cause, right?
She had a cause. Her cause was animals. She just loved animals. From the minute that she could be on her own navigating around, she would crawl under the table to be with Sammy. If it was in any way, shape, or form a creature, it was in her midst. And so in writing her obituary, you get this, it's a form, and in lieu of flowers. And so we said, well, what's her cause? It's animals. And she loved to go to the animal control center, and she recycled bottles, and she'd take her bottle money and she'd buy milk bones. And everyone says, oh, that's so cute. It was her past. Like, she would bribe her way into the animal control center. And so we said, you know what, let's just ask for donations in her memory to go there, and we'll buy a lot of milk bones. I left out the word control when I filled out that part of the obituary, and we asked for donations to go in Catherine's memory to the Animal Center of Newtown. They received over $100,000 in a matter of 4 or 5 weeks. They came to our kitchen table and they said, we are it's very nice. It's very nice to meet you. We received a lot of money in Catherine's memory. We don't know what to do with it. And we didn't. Catherine was the animal girl. We didn't know what to do with it. So they suggested a sanctuary. They saw it as a place of healing in the truest sense of sanctuary, and a place where children could see their own innate beauty in the eyes of the animals that they encountered. And as they spoke about this place that they envisioned, I saw Catherine on the floor playing with her animals, and I said, let's do it. Let's build an animal sanctuary. So the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary was born on that day, and we are a place that honors the human-animal bond. We offer incredible, cool programs that I know would have been favorites of Catherine's. We teach kids how to take care of the animals in their midst, whether it's habitat conservation or literally hands-on animals. We do something very cool that's called Vet 101. And, the sanctuary itself was, the property was gifted to us in 2014. The property, I was told, would be a once in a life. If it happened in my lifetime, it would be a major feat. And God is good. I really believe that God is in the midst of the work that we're doing there, and an example of His glory and His creation. The land was gifted us to us by the state in 2015. It took us a year after we started, pursuing it. So we've got land. We've educated tens of thousands of children through the school system, and we keep pets with their older adults. We provide ongoing support for over 200 animals in housing authorities that live with older adults who can't afford to have them. And we work with adoption rescues. Every single day I get to go to work and know that I am honoring Catherine's memory in ways that I think she would just be delighted. It's magnificent.
Oh, can you tell us, where is it located? Like, if we're traveling and we want to stop in and check it out.
Or send a donation.
Yeah, exactly.
So the sanctuary is in Newtown. It's literally in the heart of Newtown. You can, it's 3 Old Farm Road if you wanted to put it in your GPS, but you can learn all about the sanctuary, all the work that we're doing at cvhfoundation.org. cvhfoundation.org. So Catherine Violet Hubbard, cvhfoundation.org.
Okay, wonderful.
So cvhfoundation.org.
That was kind of the next question too, because I keep thinking, you know, everybody's going to get really excited about what you're doing here, and they need a place to channel that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. It really is. It's humbling for me to know that God would redeem the ashes of Sandy Hook in such a incredible way, both through the sanctuary, and I've often prayed and written in my journal how grateful I am that he'd use my hand as his ink pen.
Nice. Do you ever have events there then for other surviving families and siblings and things where you have a special day for people to just gather and be there together?
We don't. The sanctuary is in the truest form a sanctuary. It's quiet. It's a place where it just kind of begs stillness and contemplativeness. And we're open every single day. And so we invite people to come up to the sanctuary and find that place of stillness and healing in what they see fit. And so we see a lot of families up there, and we don't ask anybody to report in that you're visiting. Just enjoy the property in your own time and in the ways that you feel appropriate. We've never had an issue. It's amazing.
How beautiful. You can just feel in those pictures how Catherine's life goes on and how she's touching, you know, hundreds of thousands of people as time goes on. So thank you for being on. And I just want to encourage everybody, look up Jennifer Hubbard's book, Finding Sanctuary, How the Wild Work of Peace Restored the Heart of a Sandy Hook Mother. It's for everybody, and you will love it.